Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here, and today I'm reviewing Honourbound. Now, this is going to be spoiler free until it's not spoiler free. I'm going to make it very, very clear when spoilers are coming, but don't worry, you won't be able to miss that announcement. Like, the screen will flash, I will say it, you're fine. So first I'm going to say my general thoughts. Would I recommend the book? I'm going to read the blurb in case you haven't, and then I'm going to go into spoilers. Let's start where any real book review should start, with the blurb. A little weird side note, I actually don't like to read blurbs before I read the book, so I only read the blurb after I finished the book, because I find that a lot of blurbs these days spoil books, which I hate, absolutely hate. Anyway, this blurb does not spoil the book. That's the only reason I'm reading it. Uncompromising and fierce, Commissar Severy Naren has always served the Imperium with the utmost distinction. Attached to the 11th Antari Rifles, she instills order and courage in the face of utter horror. But horror takes many forms, and Rain's unshakable faith is about to be put to the ultimate test. As the Chaos Cult known as the Sighted sweeps through the Bale stars, a shadow falls across its benighted worlds. In answer, a great campaign, led by the vaunted hero Lord General Militant Alar Serek, is underway to free the systems from tyranny and enslavement, and the price of victory must be paid in blood. As Rain and the Antari become embroiled in the conflict, dark secrets are unearthed. Secrets that might cast a light onto Rain's own troubled past. Only by embracing her duty and staying true to her belief in the Imperium and the Commissar's creed can she hope to survive this crucible. But even then, will that be enough? So very quickly, the front cover here, this is Severy Naren. And this chap here is a bloke called Andren Fell. He's a stormtrooper. Okay, what can we say about Honourbound that is not a spoiler? So, Severy Naren is a commissar, and she's in charge of the Antari Rifles, a military regiment within the Imperial Guard that is crusading through the Bale Stars. We got that from the blur. The main characterization that the Antari Rifles are given is that they are a very tribalistic, superstitious race, that's not the word, regiment. All of their names are named after mythical creatures from their homeworld. So there will be like the Firehawks, who obviously are the guys with flamers, or the Duskhounds, who we learn throughout the book are like the Grim Reaper, effectively. And so they all have that kind of characterization, and it's good. I like it. It gives the Antari Rifles a definite flavour, definitely. Do you like it? Do you not like it? That's really how much you're interested in that kind of thing. As far as characterization of the regiment goes, it was a very safe bet, I would say. Like, there was nothing in there that kind of was like, whoa, I can't believe the author's trying to do this. That's weird, you know. It was all very by the books, I feel. But let's talk about Severy Naren. Now, I actually liked Severino, the character, mainly because she's a commissar. And this is really, I mean, if you're reading a book about a commissar, you kind of want to see a commissar being a commissar, right? Slight proviso, I've only read the first few books of Gaunt's Ghosts. I don't know where it's gone after them. And I've only read Caiaphas Cain. Caiaphas Cain isn't a real commissar, it's a joke book. We won't really pay attention to that. Gaunt's Ghosts. So both of these commissars are friendly commissars, aren't they? You know, they're not the grimdark. As soon as somebody turns around, the commissar blams them in the head. That's just not them. Severina is very close to that. So it's really interesting to see how, you know, the thought process behind a commissar and when they make a kill of their own regiment. Yeah, it was cool to see that. I enjoyed reading that side of her. It's very clearly shown throughout the book that she is equally loved and hated. Loved is definitely the wrong word. Tolerated and hated by the regiment. Even though she interacts with the regiment, she's an outsider. Because she kills them on occasion. Because she's a commissar, that's what she's there to do. And it was actually really cool to see that. So, if you want to see how a commissar feels about killing their own regiment, this is a great one to read. And I thought it was really well done as well. So, definite 2 thumbs up for the characterization of the commissar aspects of Severino herself. Cool. We follow Severino, Andrew Fell, who is the stormtrooper, some guy who I call John Wick, because his second name is Wick, I can't remember his actual real name, who is crazy, basically. And then we also follow Lydia Zane, who is a psycho, a Primaris psycho? Yes. Which, as my brain just clicked over there, Primaris psycho as in a psycho, not a Primaris space marine. There is a class of psycho called Primaris psycho, because Primaris just means first. Who did I like? Andrew Fell was bleh. He was a bit nothing. He didn't really speak to me. Wick, John Wick. I should probably find out his name for this review, shouldn't I? But I'm not going to. Wick was interesting. Effectively, Wick is on drugs for the whole book. If you've seen the movie Judge Dredd, or no, just Dredd, sorry, where they take slow-mo, he's basically on that drug for the entire book. So, yeah. I found his chapters alternated between cool and a bit boring. That's fine. And then Lydia Zane. Now, I should tell you, I inherently don't like Lydia Zane because she has the same name. Lydia is one of my exes. And so I was instantly triggered. But, you know, that's not Zane's fault, I guess. So, she was interesting to see. It was cool to see how powerful a psyker can be. Because on the tabletop and in a lot of fiction, you typically see a psyker like, oh yeah, I blew somebody's head up, but it kind of almost blew my own head up. And it's like, fine, I guess. Or it's like, a psyker has to like spend their entire life force to send a message through the warp. And it's like, probably wouldn't be a psyker then, if I'm honest. If that's my option, probably wouldn't be a psyker. So it was cool to see a psyker that actually did things. And certainly Lydia Zane was very active, killed a lot of people. Had a lot of psychic battles as well. So yeah, Lydia Zane in general, a cool character. So, the final thing before I get into spoilers. Should you read Honourbound? I'm going to say yes. I would recommend Honourbound to anyone that's interested in Imperial Guard, that's interested in different regiments and how they're kind of created, and also commissars. If you're interested in how a real commissar would act, I really felt like Severino was a great example of that. Oh, you know what? A final note that is actually really, really important. The whole book is written in present tense. That's going to take a bit of getting used to, as all other books, as far as I'm aware, apart from books that involve Severy Naren and the short stories by her, are all past tense. I actually thought present tense worked really well. One of my big issues with a lot of Black Library is that due to the past tense, which is normal, I have nothing against past tense, but also the way that Black Library encourages its authors to word certain things and phrase things, it tends to be very slow and boring, which is something I'm going to get to at the end. But present tense actually helped with that, picked everything up a little bit. So yeah, present tense, a good thing for me. Commissar Severy Naren, a good thing. Now we are going to go to spoilers. So this is me waving to try and get people's attention if I'm on the other screen. Spoilers. If you do not want spoilers for this book, my recommendation is go buy it, have a read. It's pretty good as 40k novels go. Okay, on to spoilers. So when I say spoilers, I don't mean I'm going to just tell you what happens in the book. I don't think that really helps anyone. but I'm not going to guard my language when I talk about the negatives of the book, because of course the first 10 minutes there have been really positive. And, you know, I genuinely enjoyed the book, but why didn't I like the book? And also, why am I, on the back of this book, deciding not to read another 40k book, possibly ever again? Good question. So, I've made notes. So a lot of my issues with the writing actually had to do with a literary standpoint, and didn't really... So I'm an author, and a lot of people might not read this much into books, but I obviously do. So, right, the first 80 pages, I think it's like 3-4 chapters, are a big fight scene. But we don't know anyone. We don't know Severy Naren, we don't know Andrew Fell, we don't know John Wick, we don't know Lydia Zane, we don't know the Antari. Why the fuck are you giving me 80 pages of a fight scene about people I don't know? Okay, for anybody unaware, when it comes to books and characterization of fight scenes, action has to be earned. An action scene is not inherently interesting, okay? It's just not. The thing that is interesting, the thing that grips people, are the interaction between characters and what a fight scene could mean for that character. If you start a book with somebody getting shot in the head, I don't care. Why would I? Getting shot in the head isn't interesting. Unless, of course, it's some twist like you get shot in the head, but it doesn't kill you. That's interesting. That's characterization. I had to read 80 pages of nothing. I could have skipped 80 pages. It pissed me off. Do not start a book like that. It's genuinely shit. However, some people do like action, and I accept that. And it's entirely personal preference. All I'm saying is that this action was not earned. The author did nothing to ingratiate me to any of the characters over 80 pages. I am genuinely saying that if I was not reading this book partly to do this review, I would have stopped. Everything I said in the first 10 minutes still stands, though, and I'm glad I finished, but terrible start, terrible start, terrible start. However, the author does continue to just do bad things in these 80 pages. It's not like it was top-notch quality writing for 80 pages, but it was action and I happen to not like action. No. So the other rule of action scenes is it should be flowing. You don't want to think about what's happening. You don't really need to know the scene and the setting to enjoy action. You know, you don't need a blow-by-blow. It was, okay, so there was one of the Firehawks, I believe it was, who has a flamer or something, was ordered by Severy Naren to go and kill some automatons from the sighted. And they run up and they kill them, don't kill them. They kill them, the automatons, but then a few of them die. In the middle of this, right, in the middle of this action scene where, you know, we've got some character time which we don't care about, as I've just pointed out. It's like, this should be a flowing scene, this should be quick, snappy, you know, describe what Prometheum does, you know, okay, cool. The author stops mid-action. It's like, you know, the person just like pulled on the flame and the Prometheum's flowing. Stops in the middle of action to just discuss some world building. Like, what? First chapter. Just, let's stop here and let's just discuss why they're called the Firehawks. Fuck off. We're in the middle of action. Genuinely bad writing. Genuinely bad writing. So also the author, this isn't really a negative thing, this is just something I noted. The author did the now, unfortunately, classic move, I think done quite handily in Game of Thrones, where to come up with a fantasy name, you just take a common name. And in this one of the troopers is called Jeff. Jeth. That's just the name Jeff. They just took the name Jeff and said, let's jumble that up a bit. So they're called Jeff. That happens a few times. I thought it was more funny than anything, but obviously you don't really want an Imperial Guard trooper's name to be funny in the middle of a fight scene. Still, we're in a fight scene. Fucking hell. Okay, so that was page 25 and page 41 respectively. I've got it here. Page 83. At this point, I decided the author is genuinely afraid of dialogue. Won't let characters just talk. We also get a perfect time for exposition, but it's wasted on something we already know, which is a shame. My recollection of this is, as I said, the author here had already stopped to define that, the Firehawks. It's obvious what a Firehawk is. We're not retarded. We know that a Firehawk is something, and not just Firehawk, but Duskhounds, other mythical creatures that I mentioned earlier. We're not retarded. We can figure out that they are from folk legend back on their world. We don't need to be told. Back on Antari, we don't need to be told that. So anyway, by page 83, we're out of the action. Great. And then we get a little bit of character building, a little bit of world building. Great. Good stuff. Perfect. Now, at this point, I'm actually starting to like what I'm seeing. The action was terrible. Do not do that. Now we're good. We're getting some good stuff. Awesome. However, I want to say the author is bad at dialogue, but that's not the case at all. Because I have a vague notion of how these things work. I suspect that Black Library is afraid of dialogue. The way it came across, I am going to say the author, but please be aware that when I say the author, I am fully conscious that I'm really meaning the editors and Black Library, etc. So, the author was just terrified of dialogue. I don't think she had more than 2 sentences in a row, ever. Maybe 3, tops 4. But it's like, dialogue is great. Do not be afraid of dialogue. Dialogue can tell us so much. The way someone speaks, their verbiage, the grammar, the punctuation within the sentence, body actions tells us so much more than I'm Severino. But the author just didn't do it, and this was the first time we finally got out of the fight scene. The shitty action we had to read through there, 80 pages of it, and we've got interaction, and the author blundered it. If I'm honest, complete missed opportunity. And so instead of giving us dialogue, we got told what the mythical creatures were. But we were specifically told the Antari Rifles named their regiments after, or their squads after mythical creatures from Antari. Great. Thanks. I hadn't figured that out. Anyway, okay. So, that's page 83. The next note is page 123. So I will note, 40 pages without me picking up an issue. Pretty good. Pretty good. Let's be honest. I'm a very negative and critical person. So 40 pages with no issue. Good. I've put terrible soldier dialogue. Giving away exposition, but exposition we already have. So this is very much the same thing. The author just doesn't like dialogue. I assume by this point, I had just decided, okay, the author doesn't know what's up with dialogue. Fine. However, the next note, page 40, first time there's some good engaging dialogue. That's, okay, so this is, I think, probably my only positive note. But my god, 140 pages until we get anything remotely interesting in dialogue is nuts. That's insane. What? But anyway, the author proves that she is capable of writing dialogue. And my question has to be, why didn't it come earlier? Anyway, page 153, 9th of 9. So the bad guys, the big bad guys in this are considered a bunch of psychers that kind of lead the sighted, and they are all of 9. So they're like 1 of 9, 2 of 9, 3 of 9. And the first one we meet in this instance is called 9 of 9. 9 for some reason being a special religious number for the sighted. If I knew my chaos better, I would be able to say which god that is, but I assume it's unaligned because there are 9 points on the chaos star. Don't know. Anyway, This is the first time we get a bit of exposition about the bad guys. 9 of 9. But that means logically there is a 7 of 9. And that is a hot Star Trek person. Okay, we then go over to page 211. So, 60 pages later, that means for 60 pages I was having a good time. I've put our first fight that has really been earned by the story. So yeah. So what that means, for those of you unaware, is that during this story, there was a build-up to the fight. I was given character motivations for the fight. I know what everybody wanted going into this fight. I knew what the stakes were. I was excited for the fight because I was engaged by the characters and their motivations. This is great. This is what the first fight should have been. Cool. Page 219. Mentioned someone was shot by firing squad and blood bloomed from their wound. Oh yeah, okay. So somebody gets killed in firing squad, and the line is blood bloomed from their wound. But I thought las guns cauterized instantly. Do they not? Anyway, minor technical note there. Black Library should have picked up on that, I think. So again, page 219. Severino is finally described as having warm brown skin with dark eyes. That's fine. However, that implies she's a person of colour, which is great, no issues. This is not a person of colour. She's white. I have no issues with this. I'm just pointing out, warm brown could be very tanned, white person, or I would have probably read it as not white. But this person is clearly white. Consistency. Although, let's also be honest, the internet would have gone nuts if this person wasn't white, because the internet's crazy. Right, page 220. Yeah, this was just a really weird kind of inconsistency. Basically, the bad guys claim that the good guys are doing things by following emotion, and if they stopped and thought about their head, like logically, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. But then the good guys literally just say, "You're right, I am following my heart, therefore it's good." It's like, I feel like the good guys didn't really absorb what the bad guys were saying there. Don't know. Weird. But it was like this happening literally in one page, paragraph. It's not like this was a theme spread out throughout the book. It was just, hey, don't listen to your heart, listen to your head. Think about it logically. We, the bad guys, are actually doing a good thing. And the good guys were just like, no, don't wanna. Right, page 223. Lydia Zane, the Psyker, when she uses her abilities, literally... Oh, okay, yeah. So Lydia Zane, the primary Psyker, has to do something that really stresses her abilities. And it's very clearly described that when she does this, all of the wounds, like her scars, etc., open up on her body. That would kill her. I'm just throwing it out there. I get it, you're doing grimdark, good for you, but that would definitely kill her. Doesn't seem practical, is all I'm saying. Or you'd at least instantly pass out from blood loss, and even if you then instantly healed, your psychic power wouldn't have worked. Anyway, okay, so page 30, we get the knife as a mirror round a corner trick. First off, that doesn't work. Secondly, this was done by a stormtrooper. They deliberately dull their knives. I think it's actually mentioned later or early in the book that they pick up a knife and it's too shiny. They actually say, "Oh, I need to dull that," or maybe it's Wick that says that. But either way, I was like, no, it just doesn't work. Doesn't work. Come on. Then at page 327, and I realise nobody is watching this video at this point, but this is actually a big issue. So there's a character who's one of the Antari commanders called Yuri Hale. He gets a single mention at the beginning of the book, as far as I can remember. Isn't mentioned for 300 pages, and is suddenly reintroduced at the end for no real reason? Sloppy writing. Firstly, how do I not know the commander of the Antari? You probably should have mentioned him a bit earlier. He was mentioned earlier, but then just left. Because he wasn't a character that we followed, fine, but what? Why would you introduce a new character 50 pages before the end of the book? What? That's terrible writing. Come on. You could have consolidated characters, is all I'm saying. And then page 348, final note, we're almost there, guys. John Wick, it turns out, has fair hair. That's the first time that's mentioned, I believe. Or it's the first time I noticed it. Which was weird, because I always imagined the John Wick character there to look like John Wick. I mean, that makes sense. He literally has the same last name. Okay, so, having gone through all of those, my final note, my spoiler inclusive wrap-up, is that I hated the way the book started. I don't know what the author was thinking. It wasn't an earned action scene, but it went on for 80 pages. It's really terrible decision. It improved after that, though. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is proper spoilers here. The book should have ended about 100 pages early. Basically, everything the book was doing, building up to, was achieved and accomplished. And then the big bad guy, Alar Serek, comes along and says, oh, hey, go do another thing. And it's like, okay, weird, but alright. Because it was out of nowhere. Like, there was no justification, no reason for it. So then they went and did it. And that went fine. It was an excuse for another big action scene that I didn't really care about. And then they came back and they killed Alar Serek, and yay. But that just seemed clumsy. I'm genuinely going to assume that was done purely for the action scene, but I didn't feel it was earned. Which is a real shame. Because at that point, I was relatively impressed by the book. I've got to be honest. But then it just went on for another 50 pages, like, hey, do another action scene. It's like, oh, okay, why? Oh. We haven't hit our monthly quota for action scenes in Black Library books, I guess. And with all of that said, as soon as I finished reading this, I went straight on to read another book, Scourge of Fate, which is actually an Age of Sigmar book, which is a book where a Varangard, a Chaos Champion, tries to become a Varangard, and it's his journey through the Varan Spire. Obviously, I was inspired by Warcry. I wanted to see what was going on. And that was actually a good book. I don't typically like that kind of thing. But yeah, I thought Scourge of Fate was really good as well. And I read that. I'm not going to review it. Even though this and Scourge of Fate were good books, and I would recommend them both. So if you're into Imperial Guard Commissars, read this. If you want to know more about the Chaos Legions, and what being a Varangard, following Archaon, is really like, go read Scourge of Fate. Both highly recommendable books. But, even though these were both some of arguably the best books I've read when it comes to the Games Workshop IP, they're just nothing compared to books I actually want to read. I read these books because I'm interested in Warhammer. And okay, I'm going to completely divorce this thought from the authors. I do not blame the authors at all. I blame Black Library and Games Workshop. They are making the authors write in such a style that I just don't like it. Now, this is entirely personal. Some people love this stuff. For example, Black Library's re-release has just started a new imprint. It's not a new imprint. Entirely wrong words. Has just started a new publishing thing. The sci-fi horror. That's cool. I have zero interest in horror. I'm never going to read them. But it's cool that they're doing it. And just like the horror books are going to be distinct from the generic 40k books, generic 40k books are written in such a style that they are distinct from books that I actually like. Not in a negative or positive way in general, but for me, I don't like them. I just don't like them. And so I'm finally giving up reading Black Library books because they're just a slog. The reason I say this is because before I began reading Honourbound, I had just finished The Shadow Campaigns Book 1 by Django Wexler. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I loved reading every second of it. I stayed up late to read. I got into bed early because I was looking forward to reading more of the book, and it was just it was great to read something I was excited to read. This was a slog. I stayed up late so that I didn't have to read in bed. Anyway, read the books you want to read if you like Warhammer books. That's awesome. I do not disparage anyone that likes reading anything, but they're not for me. Anyway, I've rambled for a very long time. This was not meant to be this long. I apologise. I will be shocked if anyone's made it this far and actually listened to the entire thing. I suspect those that have would be the painters. Good job, painters. I hope you've made some awesome progress. This has been Glass Half Dead. Hoping you've had a great day. Goodbye.